Good afternoon. Tatjana Hodnik is my name, coming from the University of Ljubljana Faculty of Education. I'm going to be the chair of this session together with my colleague Tina Kral. We are going to host you in this Zoom session. We agree that each presenter will do approximately 20 minutes of presentation, and then we have 10 minutes of discussion after each presentation. You can send your questions to chat, or maybe you raise your hand and ask questions. You are very welcome to participate in our discussions. And I will not take your time, and I'm going to announce the first presenter. She will be Nita Bakija-Haraçija, and the title of presentation is The Impact of the Pandemic Situation on Preparing Students, Teachers Professionally, Perceptions of Students and Their Mentors During Student Teaching Practice. Please, the floor is yours.
So, hi, good evening. I'm Nita. I'm from the Faculty of Education from the University of Pristina here in Kosovo. I am a PhD student in the University of Ljubljana. So I'm here to present a paper of a study, in fact, that I made with students here in the Faculty of Education in Pristina, with the title "The Impact of Pandemic Situation During this in Preparing the Students Professionally, According to Their Perceptions and the Mentor Teachers' Perceptions." So I'm going to share the screen. So the Faculty of Education is established here in Pristina since 2002. Before, we have some high pedagogical schools, and in general, they have been prepared as teachers. But as a faculty with the 4 years of study, we started 2002. As a faculty, as an institution, we offer lectures for students who willing to become teachers, and also the pedagogical practice. As a term I will use in the next chapters as student teaching practice. Student teaching practice in the Faculty of Education is organized with several years during the several years of study, with 20 weeks when the students go to school to gain their pedagogical practice. So in the first year they go for two weeks, in the second year they go for 4 weeks, and third year they go for 6 weeks, and then the final year they go for 8 weeks, and they have and we see that they are more prepared and more competent to manage the class, to organize the lectures, maybe, but in the observation, during the observation of their mentor. So here in Kosovo, the schools during the pandemic situation was closed since March till September. But in September, the primary, secondary, and high school were opened, but worked with a part-time schedule, meaning that teachers worked with pupils in 2 or 3 groups with 2 or 3 hours of teaching classes. But higher education is still offering online lectures. So in the faculty, students take just online lectures. But we have managed to send our students to schools because they are open. So since October 2020 till December, our students went to school to gain their practical experience. So went to school, I started to think that it might be a good opportunity to ask them and their mentors how they feel during this time, how can they give all their want for the teaching profession? Can they prepare students, teachers according to their experience during this student teaching practice? So my interest during this time from October to December to ask students and mentors was, does the student teaching practice during the pandemic, how does it work, the student teaching practice during the pandemic period? Was mentor teachers ready to give the student teachers their experience, their knowledge, maybe theoretical knowledge, or some advices according to their methodologic learning techniques or something like that? And also, does the student teacher saw that even that the pandemic period had an impact, does it had also an impact in their professional development? So in general, it was my interest to ask if that pandemic period impact in the student teaching practice as an experience and also as a process. So the aim of the study was to reveal student teachers' perceptions about how they see their mentors, teachers' willingness to provide their experience in order to prepare them professionally. Also, to what extent student teaching practice helps student teachers on their professional development during the pandemic period. So the sample was the 167 student teachers and 10 mentor teachers. So the online questionnaire was used with the student teachers, and then semi-structured interviews was used with 10 mentor teachers who was a part of the schools and was assigned as mentors for some of the student teachers that were part of their classes. So we can see that still now the teaching profession as a profession is more selected by females. So 80% maybe in the faculty we have female students. So also the bachelor number of students is a larger number than the master in this part of the study, and the study was made from October and December 2020. So the data collection was a survey with the student teachers from bachelor and master degree from the study program that we offer, primary teacher educator, pre-primary teacher educator, and pedagogical general pedagogical program. Also, we offer some master study programs with subject programs, and so it was in general bachelor and master students. The semi-structured interviews was organized with 10 mentor teachers selected randomly, but I have to check them if they are because we train them for being mentors, so I have to check them if they are trained. And also I can send them students to them and then ask them if they had a good student teaching practice or share good experience with them. So students, the questionnaire with student teachers was according to maybe to three themes, two or three themes that I thought that I could get some information. First, it was a student teaching practice as a process during teaching during a pandemic period, and the collaboration with the mentor teacher, how student teachers saw this this collaboration despite the pandemic period. Just to check. So the student teaching practice as a process, we sent this time we sent students to urban and rural schools because we couldn't bring them within we couldn't bring them in all of them in Pristina because of the virus. So so they can feel more free maybe, or more healthy to stay divided in several places. And so some of them were was in school of within Pristina, but most of them was outside of Pristina. So even if the Ramsey, as the author, said that our teachers should be prepared for rural and urban schools, so we didn't have any problem with sharing them to gain their experience from urban or rural school. So the questionnaire, it was made with some questions in the first part, and then with some statements. So I took some questions and some statements to present in order to give you a bigger picture about what I have explored maybe or searched. So some of the one of the statements was due to the pandemic period, the organization of the student teaching practice once a week was enough for you. Most of the students didn't agree because in previous years, they went to schools for 4 or 5 years during the week. So once a week, it was a problem to gain maybe. Maybe they gained some elementary I don't know how to say, some elementary theories of practices, but not in general or too much information as they needed. So we had a problem during this spreading the students in our schools, because the directors of the education and the directors of schools first they didn't want to accept our students because they see as a threat for students, for staff, for if they have another students or persons within the class. So we made an arrangement, and we agreed to send our students once a week, so they can take maybe some of the teacher's experience, but not at all. So it was once a week. It was not enough, but that's what we could do for them in this pandemic period, of course. So another question was that did the student teaching practice during pandemic period help you for gaining your professional development, for gaining experience for your professional development? Some of them told that yes, but some of them no. This is what happened with different classes, different teachers, different approaches, different maybe wanted different students that want something different from our their mentor teachers, or expected different things from their mentor teachers. So it was different answers. One of the questions was that during the pandemic period, the schedule of teaching lessons wasn't an obstacle for effective teaching, because as I mentioned before, our mentor teachers, our teachers in schools works with a part-time teaching lesson, so I thought that as a statement I could ask to student or share to student if they saw that as an obstacle, but some of them totally disagree that it wasn't. So they say that it was an obstacle because they maybe if their teaching lesson was more long, or their presence in school was 4 or 5 days during the week, they can gain more theoretical and practical knowledge and experience. It is obviously. So their collaboration with the mentor teacher during this pandemic period, first of all, I wanted to ask them if teachers saw them as a threat during their presence within the class. But most of all, as you can see, they answer that totally agree that it wasn't that their mentor teacher wasn't afraid about their presence in class, so they can feel free to discuss with pupils, to discuss with mentor according to their or regarding to their needs as a student teacher. One of the statements was that during this pandemic period, was your mentor ready to collaborate and to offer the knowledge or the experience that you needed? As you can see, most of them agree that they are ready, and despite the pandemic pressure maybe, or the short schedule lesson, they feel free and they were ready to give their experience and their knowledge to student teachers. So another statement was that mentor teacher seems motivated. I asked the students, how do you see motivated? They say that the teacher seems enthusiastic, they welcome them, they give literature, they give different documents, they invite them, despite that they have once a week practice, they invite them in the online courses, because our classes during this period from September till now, time after time went on online discussions, on online teaching, because of the virus within the class. So they feel motivated. They feel that their teacher, their mentor teacher, accept them as a new colleague maybe, or as a student that needs to be learned. Another statement was that during this pandemic period, that mentor teachers feel ready to advise and regarding to the teaching profession. Most of them say that totally agree about that. So the interview with the mentor teacher was that according to their perception, according to our mentor teachers' perceptions, how can student teaching practice can impact in student teachers' professional development. So I wanted to ask them how they see that a student can be prepared during this student teaching experience or student teaching process within those weeks that we offer as a faculty. So some of them answered that practice they can practice the teaching profession despite they gain a theoretical knowledge in faculty. They can practice the profession within the field, in class, in school environment, discussion with the mentor, etc. Develop their theoretical knowledge. Class management, because they can see if some of the pupils can or in the class management, we can say about the time that the teaching lesson is organized, how teacher deal with several situations of several people that may ask or add something during the class, etc. Contact with the teacher, pupil, staff during this period of student teaching practice. By practicing the teaching profession in practice, and they can deal during this student teaching practice with scheduled plan, any situation within the class, and something like that. Also, mentor teachers were asked how did you can you describe how you contributed for the student teacher development during this process, or during this experience when your student is presented or in your class is offering you to ask or to observe your work. So they feel free to they're making them to feel free to ask, to observe, to learn, to discuss, to be part of the activities. And one of them it said that my class, I converted it in the theater, where my role was to play and to see during that role, I will give the student teachers as many as possible messages, advices, free environment so the student teachers can't feel the pressure of this observation moment, discussing after classes. So one of the contribution of their mentor teachers was to discuss.
Nita, may I just kindly remind you that you have a little more time to conclude. You don't have much time.
Okay, I will be short. Yeah. Okay, so some of the contribution of the mentor teachers was discussing after classes, taking to surface more important issues about teaching profession, and giving them opportunities in online classes, as I mentioned before. Also, as a student, some of the characteristics how the student can be a good teacher, be part of the class regularly, show interest during activities, know competencies within the class, comprehend their role as a learner within the class, and something like that. So also some characteristics as a seeker, researcher, analyzer, observer, accountable, etc. And the conclusion. So the conclusion was of the study was that the mentor teachers' readiness to collaborate, the performance of mentor teachers has a correlation with their readiness to collaborate with student teachers during this this pandemic period in the process of student teaching practice. So the student teaching practice, despite the pandemic period, had a positive impact. Students saw that they could get many as possible possibilities to gain their experiences from their mentor teachers, but it hindered the ideal preparation of teaching profession. So this was the conclusions from this study. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Nita. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Now you can stop sharing the document. Maybe we better see each other. Now it's time for maybe one question. We don't have much time. But please join with some, maybe two. Okay. Some comments, or maybe you can send to the chat if you don't want to say it out loud, please. Okay, maybe I can ask you, would you consider like teaching practice, like online as teaching practice, really. So I think there's some parts what is about teaching practice are missing when we speak about distance teaching. So I think it's not about teaching and learning in general meaning.
So teaching in physical, so teaching within class is different because with, as I understood good, with teaching, with online teaching, because the interaction is missing, the interaction with pupils, with students, with staff. So it's different from the online teaching. I think that our students can gain some of the information during the online teaching with their mentor teachers, but it's not the similar with the physical teaching or within the class, when you can discuss, you can ask a question, when you can see the students, ask the pupils, ask them, or organize different activities and something like that. So it's different from the online teaching. Definitely.
Yes, of course, it's not about, I think, what about educating? It's not only about teaching, it's also education of people. I mean, you know what I mean, like how to behave. I don't know, how to communicate, how to, so in many, I don't know, you can just mute your pupils if they are noisy, let's say, in front of their screens, yes, what you cannot do in the classroom. You know what I mean?
Sorry, the internet is not good, so I couldn't hear all the question.
Because I was just commenting that on when you teach online, yes, you can just mute your pupils.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But in the classroom, this is not an option. Yeah. So I mean, this is also the issue.
But this is the beauty of the teaching.
Oh, come
because
on.
the interaction. They can ask, you can give them. No. You can. They can be more near you to say something. You can see their faces, all of them faces. You can see their hands. So that's the beauty of the physical teaching, or I may say physical in class.
Yes, in the classroom. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. It was really interesting. You know, teaching practice is always challenging online for me, and I believe to others as well. Yes. So I would like to.
It is and it will be.
Sorry?
It is and it will be a challenging process.
Thank you very much once more. So I would like to announce our second presenter for this afternoon. Sina Westa is with us. She's going to present her paper, Online Cooperation in Teacher Education. How do teacher education students perceive cooperative learning in an online environment? So please, Sina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. At least that's my plan. Now you should see my screen, and yes, we're in full screen mode. So you heard already, I'm talking about online cooperation in teacher education. Yes, that's a challenge. The similar challenge as practices and internships in teacher education. So when the pandemic started, I was thinking, usually I see my students in class, they will talk to each other, they can cooperate. So in my seminars, I try not to only give them insights from my perspective, but to, work together. How can we work together in an online environment when we moved from personal seeing each other to sitting in front of our computers? This was my challenge, and I thought I still want them to interact, to work together, and to do what they usually do in my seminars. I did the semester beforehand a seminar on cooperative learning, where we did a lot of social skill training and things like this with the students, and they really loved it, they enjoyed it. And I was kind of planning to keep this up, but then I couldn't see my students anymore. They couldn't be close to each other, so things totally changed. Yeah, what I will do today, I will talk a little bit about cooperative learning. Then I will give you the seminar context where I conduct my questionnaires, tell you something about the sample. Of course, I will give you an insight into the questionnaire I tried to develop and the results. And yes, as usual, I have some concluding remarks to make. So what is cooperative learning? It's a little bit more than just group work. It's not only telling students, please do work together and prepare a presentation together, and that's it, because then we usually have, for example, the free rider effect, the sucker effect, or the ganging on the task effect. So we have lots of negative effects connected to group work. Cooperative learning tries to avoid these pitfalls by relying on 5 aspects: the positive interdependence, where we have actually a common and shared goal within our group. We have a feeling of thinking or swimming together. So if we don't cooperate, actually our ship won't reach the harbor. We have individual accountability as the second one, where we all feel responsible for our group task, but also for our individual share. Of course, yeah, in the old models, it says face-to-face interaction, and there we see where the difficulty comes in. Online distance teaching is not anymore the face-to-face we are used to interaction. Yeah, where we should learn from each other, where we should perform together, where we should actually interact with each other, support each other. But yeah, this needs an atmosphere of supporting each other, of trusting each other, what's very hard to reach if you only see small pictures. And I went to a presentation this morning where we were talking about the squares on the screen that we have now in online teaching tools. So how would you do this? We have, of course, interpersonal skills that the students or pupils will need to cooperate. So we can't assume they just have them, but we need to also foster them. And we have group processing, a process of really reflecting on what has happened in the group, so we can actually move on and the next time structure our cooperation better, be aware of how to cooperate and where we have pitfalls, and to proceed also in our social skills. So these are the 5 basic elements, and I was thinking about how can we do this in an online environment? How can we establish such a cooperative learning environment, and how can we support students to really work together and not just side by side, giving us a working product that we want them to give us because they are created, but really gaining something from the joint work. So I did the first questionnaire in the summer semester 2020. It was a course on written language acquisition. The second part, so the students had already some preliminary knowledge on the topic. There were 4 semester students and the course was created. It was actually 5 seminars. So we had the whole cohort of our students at the Catholic University of Eichstätt-Ingolstadt. That's a very small university. So we usually rely on having a really close contact to the students. The students do know each other because we don't have that many of them. And it's a really small place where you meet them also in the city if you live in Eichstätt. So you really do know them. What of course changed with the pandemic. We were 3 different educators teaching these 5 seminars, but we all follow the same structure. We sat together and we planned it together. So all students should have the same input, and we also exchanged our experiences. The task for the students was to prepare a topical presentation. They were already given basic literature, but should extend this basic literature with things and actually not only do a topical presentation, but prepare a presentation where other students could learn from. So prepare a presentation where the others will really gain knowledge and experience, having some practical parts inside, and all this online, asynchronous, they were free to choose. So it was a challenge for most of them. From the 156 students of these 5 seminars, 40 students answered the questionnaire. I don't know in which seminars they were. I taught one of the seminars on my own, but I wanted to mix them up so they really feel confident that it won't have any influence on the grading or anything. So we didn't know who's telling what. I did the same questionnaire to get some more insights in the winter semester 2020-2021. So students were already more used to this remote teaching as we teacher education were. I did it in my 2 courses. One was a 5th semester course created, and the students, it was on research as a tool for teacher professionalization and lesson planning. So they actually were free to choose either a teaching project that they would work out together, so everyone responsible for one task, or they would have to do a small research project. They actually all wanted to do an in-class project for primary school students. And the second course was a first semester course. It was only a pass, not pass, and it was based on participatory teaching methods. So the students were actually engaged in finding topics they were interested in. So this demanded us a lot of working together and doing it together. Then they choose one of their selected topics and prepare the presentation. I supported them with the literature research, but that was also their task. Yeah, and they had to present also a topical presentation of half an hour. The response rate of these 52 students who were in both classes, I again mixed them because I wanted to secure some form of confidentiality. 32 replied, so we have in my sample around 72 students. What was my aim? I actually designed a questionnaire because I wanted to learn and explore how students experience collaborative work in this online environment, how they structure their work, so how they really get along working together, what do they do, what media they use for the cooperation, so actually how do they communicate, and what additional challenge an online setting provides for them in comparison to a face-to-face seminar. The composition of the group was one of the major things I asked because I thought this might have an influence on how they work together. The group size was between 2 and 6 people per group, so mainly they were 3 to 5 people in each group. We had 2 groups in the first round in the winter semester with dropouts. One group started with 4 participants and 2 dropped out, so there were left only 2 people presenting. And in one group, we had 1 person dropping out. So there were at the beginning 4 and they presented their results, 3 of them. So we see 2 groups seem to have major problems working together, or students just have overloaded themselves with workload during the semester. What I was also interested in, how did they choose actually the group they were working together? And I asked them if it were maybe other group members. So did you know them? Was it because of other group members? And actually, yeah, more than 50% said yes, it was because of the other group members. The date of the presentation seemed to be also a dominant motivation for them to choose a topic. Some of the topics were created and they had assigned presentation dates. So they just thought, okay, what would fit in my own schedule? The topic was, and I was surprised, a very strong motive. So more than 55% actually choose the group just because of the topic. Yeah, and I just took the topic that was left over. Yeah, most of them strongly disagreed. So only around 8% just took what was left over. I think we usually have this. I also asked them, I was curious about if they would know the other group members beforehand, and only 9 of all the students didn't know the group members beforehand, none of them. Most of them, 39, did know a part of the group, but not all of them, and 21 have worked or knew the other group members. I've also asked some questions that I don't want to go into depth about the relationship with these other group members they know and the working experience they had in previous semesters with those people. But I think it's important to know that actually most of the students were not in a group where they didn't know anybody. How did they communicate? I think that's an interesting question for us also. Actually, the most prominent way were messenger services like WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram. 98%, more than 98% actually used this. They also used web conference tools like Zoom or Skype. Emails, shared documents with only 29% were not that common. Only 19% picked up the telephone to talk to each other, and we had 16% personal meetings. Of course, this is also relying on the pandemic and restriction, meeting each other, but I know some of them actually lived in shared flats together, so they were actually having private personal meetings as well. They almost didn't use shared storage spaces, so clouds, and no one came up with another tool that I haven't thought of beforehand. So messenger services and web conferences seem to be the dominant way, as are emails. Cooperative learning, positive interdependence. I said if we talk about positive interdependence, we actually talk also about having a shared and common aim. So I asked my students the topics and they rated them from strongly agree to strongly disagree. You can see the numbers here, and I had 3 items. The first one was we had a similar idea about the quality of our presentation, and I would say almost 80% had a similar idea about the quality of their presentation. Our aim was to reach a good product with the least possible effort, and that's the concept of ganging up on the task that I referred to here, and we see that wasn't a strong motive. So they seem to be willing to achieve more than just passing the course. And more than 70% actually aimed at delivering a very good product. The positive interdependence, the second part I looked at was more about, sinking or swimming together. How did you share groups? And you can see here some of the items. Some group members have tried to avoid work. We see here that didn't really happen. So we didn't have a sucker or free rider effect in a massive amount. One person has taken the leadership position. There we see a very diverse setting. So only 43% disagree, some agree. So it seemed that they have divided the task really differently in the different groups. We all have made a similar contribution to the work product, and I will come back to this later on. It is very interesting. So more than 65% claim that they really have made a similar contribution. We will see this later on when we talk about individual accountability. There we see a little bit of another picture when we go in the I perspective. Everybody has worked herself, has worked for himself or herself after we have divided work. So it seems like more than half of the groups have made this concept. Okay, we share the task, we go up ahead, everyone does their task and we meet later on, but we are not actually working out things together. So we didn't have this strong communication process on the learning insight and things like this. So that was missing. As I've promised here, we see a little bit of a different picture. Most people, think they haven't left most of the work to others. That's what we saw in the previous PowerPoint slide as well. I've done most of the work on my own, and here we see a little bit of a more fragmented picture because 32% suddenly think, oh, yes, of course, I have done most of the work and the others haven't, but they have almost all pretended beforehand they have shared it pretty similarly. So when it comes on judging your own contribution, it seems to change a little bit. I have felt responsible for our joint working product, so more than half really, we say 70% have felt responsible for the whole working product, not only for their part. Maybe it's important for you to know they were actually graded on the parts they have worked out on their own. So they were not graded on the whole project, but they have actually, highlighted what their contribution was and they were graded on it. That's all they could say. We want to have all the same grades. So that was their feeling. I've only felt responsible for my share of the work. We see here, they haven't really thought that they were responsible only for their share. When it comes to face-to-face interaction and interpersonal skills, I've put them together because it's very difficult to separate them in a questionnaire where we don't know really about the interpersonal skills that students have. And they had a couple of items. We have relied on the individual strengths of each group member, and actually 68% say yes, we actually figured out what the strengths of each of us is, and we have tried to work it into our working process. We jointly found solutions for problems, so that seems to have worked out very well. They seem to treat each other with respect, what I actually expected of my students, as I know them from previous semesters face to face. Almost none of them had problems or severe problems with communication. That was astonishing to me because I've taught online courses beforehand and they had major communication problems, but in this area, it didn't seem like it. Maybe because they already got used to communicating online. We have exchanged ideas and thoughts on a regular basis. So yes, it seems like they really get into communication. They are exchanging their ideas and thoughts. We have thought together about structuring our work. Yes, that's what they did. They actually structured it together. And we have worked out the content mainly together. And here we see again that we have different approaches on how to approach a group topic in an online environment that we would probably also see in a face-to-face setting, where some groups just think about the structure, divide the workload, come back together, or others just say, no, we really sit down together and we try to figure it out together as a group. So here we see a really fractured picture. Cooperative learning group processing. So did they reflect? Of course, I made them reflect with my questionnaire on what happened in this process. And they actually put together their resume about working together. So I was satisfied with our communication process. Yes, most of them were really satisfied. We only have 3%, and that's always 2 or 3 students that were not satisfied. I'm satisfied with our working product. Yes, they are. I fairly have to say they filled in the questionnaire because before they got their grades, so we don't know if they are satisfied with the grades. That's just really what they think about the working product. I was satisfied with our way of cooperation, and here we see, yes, most of them were satisfied, but yeah, 12% were not satisfied of how they work together. Of course, that's a very personal thing, how we work together, and it also depends on the group. I think we have worked very efficiently together. And yeah, here we have also a really strong tendency for the people agreeing here. Emotions, I was also interested in not just how do they perform, but how are they feeling in this. And they really felt pleasure and enjoyed it. So the enjoyment and the pleasure is more visible in my item that, of course, I did in German language. And yeah, here we see most of them really enjoyed the group work. We have 0% who strongly disagree and only around 8% disagreeing. I liked working with my group. Yes, most of them really did like this. And I felt like the others let me down. No, they didn't. They really seemed, they felt okay with their groups, but we have still 15% who really had this negative feeling, but we should think about how to prevent this. And then I was, of course, interested in, yeah, how is it in comparison to face-to-face settings? And yeah, we see here the picture. I think that working together was more difficult in a face-to-face setting. I thought there would be much more people strongly agreeing to this statement. But you see, 25 people say that it was not more difficult than in a face-to-face setting. So it seems that they cope well. And this only the first semester course, all other courses had gone through this working process and seminars already beforehand in their studies. So they were really capable of answering this question, except a couple of them who have worked together at school. My concluding remarks: working together has not lost prominence in the times of pandemic. Several times my students raised that working together is even more appreciated than beforehand because they really needed this personal exchange. I, of course, had some open question at the end, so these statements are also coming from these open questions. Working together without knowing each other makes things more complicated, and communication needs more than just exchanging words. So they had really a feeling that something was missing. And students need a contact point and space to work together, especially if they don't know each other. So we provided them with an online conference tool where they could join and they could go into breakout sessions. So just to give them a framework that they could use if they wish to. Overall, students seem to cope very well with the online situation, at least according to my results. And there were no major differences. What I think is interesting between the summer semester 2020 and the winter semester 2020 and 2021, where we already have gone with all the students through one of these phases, but there were really almost no differences between the two semesters. So yeah, that's my reference. And I want to say thank you for your attention. The last slide is a bit different because I've changed working places and I'm now at the University of Erfurt and not anymore at the Catholic University of Ingolstadt-Eichstätt. So that's my new email address. So thanks for listening to me.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sina, for your very interesting presentation, very in-depth study of cooperative learning. So now it's on you to ask, to comment. You have some questions about comments? Okay. You might have some. Maybe you say something in chat. I think, aren't you surprised that the students, you know, with the last statement, they don't meet actually many problems, you know, if they work like online, like cooperative learning, in comparison to face-to-face cooperative learning.
I think that's very interesting, and I personally was really surprised by it, because we had in the morning the presentation about the IPC seminar, where we actually put international students together, make them cooperate in an online forum, and there we usually discover lots of communication problems. But maybe because most of the students already knew each other, that makes the difference, because they were working with people they were familiar with, they have worked together beforehand. That might be an issue that's coming up here, because as I told you, only 9 people didn't know anyone in the group. The others could rely on already established working relationships, some of them even on friendships where they work together. So I think the social dimension might be here really interesting. And I've put a lot of effort in my first semester course to actually get them talk to each other, get them to know each other. I have split the course in 2 separate parts. I actually plan to get them in small groups so they at least get to know a couple of their fellow students, but then the lockdown came again and I couldn't follow through. So we did this in smaller groups online, and I've put a lot of effort, and it seemed to have worked out well, because they were actually saying at the end, they do now know other people. At the beginning, they have felt like, okay, I have no clue who I'm working with. I'm here totally new. At the end of the semester, they had a feeling, okay, at least I know some faces, I know some names, I have talked to people also personally. So I try to always give them space to exchange, also not only topically, but to exchange personal things without me being around. So I think the breakout session in Zoom was really helpful here, establishing relationships, but we see how important this is, and then actually online cooperation can work also.
Because in our research, you know, we are going to present our students missed academic community cooperation at the faculty, working together, like group working and so on. So I find this what you found very interesting. Yes. But yes, I agree totally what you explained, that they knew each other very well. You know, you prepared them somehow to this new situation. Yes. Okay. Do you have any other comments, maybe?
Nicholas has...
Yes, yes, please. Sorry, Nicholas. If you turn your microphone on.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a very interesting presentation. And one thing that struck me was that issue about the way that students judged their own contributions. And there's always the temptation to say, yeah, I gave my all, and, you know, nobody could have given more than me, that kind of thing. You know, so I thought that was quite interesting. One of the things we've done in the past is when they submit a group product, we ask individuals to also submit an account of their contribution. And it's the job of everybody else in the group to verify that account. And that's quite interesting. You know, most of the time the rest of the group will say, yes, that's exactly true. I think that's what that person did do. And now and again, somebody will say, you never did that. Yeah, so just a thought really about that whole accountability in groups, I suppose.
I think that's very interesting. I usually also often let them write reflections on their, actually I want them to reflect on what they have produced, but lots of students then bring in social problems as well. So I think there you can see then the groups where it didn't work out very well, or if you have dropouts. And in some presentations, you really can see it. And that's also something I do in some seminars where they actually, and I did this in the 5th semester course where they had the similar teaching project. And it's really hard to share tasks and to say, I'm responsible for this and for that. So they really had to write it out and had to indicate to me what parts they felt responsible. So some groups actually then sent me the same work with different names on it. And I was like, okay, who did now what? Please go back and decide who wants to be graded on which parts. And they could also choose, I want to be responsible with one person for this. But I think 30–40% decided to submit a whole piece of work, having all the names on top of it. And I think these are the groups where you can really see they love to work together. They really did work together. And the parts where they really shared between each individual, you usually see also differences in the quality and that it didn't really fit that well together. So that's also something I sometimes try to let the students choose, what do you want to be graded on? Just make sure you all have the same wish. And you can also submit it on your own if you feel that's what the group didn't work out. And what I want is have them write reflections so they can actually fix things where the group disagreed with them and they can tell me, I disagree with this, and that's going in the grading then as well. So I think, but yeah, having these reflections, your ideas, really great.
I liked that idea as well, that they generate their own assessment criteria. That sounded like a good idea. Thank you.
It's also part of their teaching process, you know, when you are becoming a teacher, and then to set up assessment criteria. And also, I think it's very interesting as what we discussed now about the participation in the group work, you know, it's good. Any other? Thank you very much. I think it's very good comments. Any other questions, probably? No. Then I think thank you very much once more, Sina.
Thank you again.
Yes.
Also for your comments.
Thank you. And I will now announce our last, but not least, presenter for today. I think that Milevica Bojović. Are you going to present?
Milica Stojković, I will present, yes.
Stojković. She's going to present a new side of the instructional face-to-face communication in the context of real-time distance e-communication. So please, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I will share my screen with you first, just to get that out of our way. And start the presentation. So just a quick confirmation, do you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So hello again, I'm Milica Stojković. I'm associate professor at University of Kragujevac, Faculty of Technical Sciences, Čačak, and co-authors of this paper are my dear colleagues, Dragana Bjekić. She's not a long time not a member of the TEPE network, but very active participant in all TEPE events. So I can say a big supporter of TEPE network. And our colleague Milevica Bojović, who is Dragana and I are in the field of educational psychology, and our colleague Milevica Bojović is an English professor at Faculty of Agronomy of our University of Kragujevac from Serbia. So you were reading the title of our presentation, and it is a new side of instructional face-to-face communication in the context of a real-time distance e-communication. It turned out to be a mouthful title, so to simplify it, it's on communication in online teaching and learning, specifically with the aspect of face-to-face, of using visual face possibilities in that communication. So I'll just minimize this, and this quote seemed like an appropriate opener that one of the richest and most powerful tools in social communication is the face. So in regular circumstances, we wouldn't have considered this as a factor because we have our face with us. But in this changed circumstances, we have an interesting choice to show our face or not in teaching. And earlier we could have discussed what side of this, from communication point of view, what side of facial expression is important, but it was not usual to just even consider the possibility to have a face or not to have a face in a teaching situation. And nowadays it's completely become norm. And also we sometimes have clear instruction to keep our face from the interaction, so which all can influence the presence and how we are present in the moment. And to go even further, majority of sessions are being recorded, so you can choose not to be present in this moment, and you can rewind and revisit some content. So it is an interesting time that we are in, and this was incentive for our research. And in this particular presentation, it's divided into two parts. In the first part, I will just briefly remind us all about some aspects of communication online, which can provide a framework for face-to-face communication. And the second part of the presentation will be a presentation of our pilot research on this topic. So when it comes to communication in general in online teaching, one of the most common ways to describe it is by criteria: is it happening at the same time or not? So we have that classification of asynchronous or synchronous communication, and that is what we refer: is it in a real time or not in a real time? And the debate about whether this which type of communication is better is somewhat outdated. So the real topic is when, why, and how to use each type of the communication in general in online teaching. So asynchronous communication, which is the one where communication is not happening in a real time, has its own very clear advantages, in a sense that many choose online because of its flexibility, because you can manage different things and not be present and do it in your own terms. But the topic of our research, which is face-to-face communication, would be in the line of synchronous online teaching and learning. And that is the framework when we are talking about whether we are using the facial expression, whether we are using our faces in the communication. And when it comes to synchronous online learning, it is research that synchronous sessions do help learners to feel like participants. It lowers the isolation effect, and this leads us to the next conceptual understanding of these two communications. That is, that synchronous online teaching communication increases motivation, increases social participation. We talked about that in the previous paper. And while the asynchronous communication is more suitable for process, information, and cognitive aspects of it. So other things being equal, this is all theoretical, but other things being equal, we could say that synchronous online communication and learning and teaching supports personal participation and motivation, and while the other type is more supports cognitive participation. And in that sense, having a face in teaching communication would go to these dimensions, supporting personal and social aspects of it. But we'll see in the next. I won't go into details here. I just I wanted to have this also as important background and framework that besides that typology of synchronous and asynchronous communication, there are 3 types of communication that are particularly important when building a community. We talked also in a previous paper about community and cooperation. So these 3 types would be content-related communication, communication that revolves around planning of the tasks, and social support communication within the teaching process. And it's interesting, the authors who researched this, it's a small sample, but I think it provides some interesting conclusions. Then when you look at the how these type of communications are divided when we have real-time communication. I will use just real-time because this synchronous, asynchronous is very difficult to pronounce. So when we are using online real-time communication, we have much more communication that goes in the social support and that goes into planning of the tasks, while in the asynchronous communication online, vast majority, look at the numbers. This is I was really taken by these results that almost all the communication in this research, at least, was content related when it comes to online teaching and learning, using mostly communication which is asynchronous, which is not in, when the teacher and the learners are not communicating at the same time. And this could have some implications later on, but I would just throw this and move on. One final remark on this general communication aspect is the importance of online nonverbal immediacy behavior. This research that I quoted did not research online teaching situations using video conferencing, but different kinds of nonverbal immediacy that shows that we are immediately present at that moment, and that can be expressed in different ways. What was important for this topic is the results that consistent use of this nonverbal immediacy behavior was related to students' reports and their higher engagement in the process, and that for teachers it is a message that we can improve our effectiveness in online learning environments with using this nonverbal immediacy behavior. And in this context, seeing our students and then is directly one of those nonverbal immediacy behaviors. And moving on to our research, I just wanted, the idea was to have some basic framework and maybe to have some sort of recommendations and to tie some meanings in the end, because our research did not, the focus of our research was not to provide some clear answers, but just to raise this topic of face-to-face communication just as a research area. So it is a rather exploratory research, and it is a part of wider research project that we are doing, investigating in general some online distance education communication between student teachers and their educators, and the communication aspect was one part of that wider research, and for the purposes of this conferences. So the questionnaire we created was more encompassing different aspects of online teaching communication, but in the next slides I'll just present the results that do refer to this face-to-face communication, a more narrow topic, and basically present the items and the response of our participants on the items that refer to perception of visual communication during online teaching and learning, then the assessment of some aspects of that process, and finally their interaction involvement, the scale of interaction involvement. And our small samples consisted of 10 teachers, 10 students, prospective teachers who are in the field of technical and informatical educations. So they are students who are being educated in becoming teachers, and 10 of university teachers, they're educators. So they are university teachers of those students. And the time frame was from March last year until February this year. And just briefly about the context, we conducted this research at our faculty, so it is a very small scale. It is pilot research in Serbia in our Faculty of Technical Sciences in Čačak. And the important background of this is that we do have significant experience in distance education, and more than 10 years we are using learning platforms, and even had a master's teaching program in e-learning. So this, when all this pandemic context started, it was not a new thing to have an online support, but what was new is the implementation of video conferencing platforms in addition to Moodle learning platform. And results are classified in these 3 categories, as you will see. When it comes to perceptions of visual communication during online teaching, I'll just go item by item, and we did not do an extensive interpretation of this data, because it is a small sample, and we draw some important conclusions from this, but you are all welcome to look at it and find different perspectives and hopefully different comments in our research. So what struck us the most, and we still have to determine what is the cause of this specific answer, that directly involvement in teaching by asking questions and commenting was not possible. We have the response that either say that during the teaching there were not many interaction coming, or maybe our participants misunderstood this question. So we are opening this data freely. We could have, when you have a question like this, you can just like erase it because it's too complex, but this is what we got. And when you look at the other significant result is when we ask them, it bothers me when I don't see the students and teachers' reactions during my lecture. Basically, does it bother you if you're not seeing your colleagues and your teachers? Only 33% of students said yes. So, and 60% of the teachers said yes. So it is a significant difference. And if you look the question below, that when we asked them if it bothers them to see only the content of the presentation and not the faces of the participants, also none of the students said that they were bothered by this, and this was something that more bothered the teachers. And I won't go into each items. If there were some specific questions in the end and comments, I would gladly go back to this table. So I'll just move on. I have to apologize, these items remain in Cyrillic, so I'll try to translate them, on at least the ones that we considered very significant or interesting. That is the question. The question is, I'm avoiding visual communication with students or with teachers, because we have students and teachers replying. And in this question, 50% of the students said, yes, I am avoiding, if I'm avoiding visual communications, and significantly a lower percent of the teacher replied like this. And if you look at the other questions here, what was also interesting is sort of discrepancies between the students' perspectives and perspective and teachers. We had that in first paper, which is the following question. When we asked them during the online classes, did the students use your classes to horizontally communicate with each other? Only 16-17% of the students said, yes, we are communicating amongst each other, and 40% of the teachers perceive that as, yes, they are communicating. So it is interesting how teachers and students have different perceptions of the same process. In assessment of different aspects of communication, what we're going to focus now, and you can look at all the questions in detail, is motivation for motivation of the participants of the e-lectures for visual communication. I have to read it myself. So were they motivated to basically turn on their cameras? You can see that motivations for a teacher is higher. And when you look, the second thing we wanted to highlight is when asked about satisfaction of the communication during the online teaching and learning in real time, students were much more satisfied in it in synchronous communication, that is in real time, than in online teaching communication that did not involve online classes but different forms of online learning. And that is something that is consistent with other findings. And finally, we applied the scale of interactional involvement, which is well-known instrument, and we adapted it so that the items remain the same, but only suitable for online context. As you can see from the results, teacher educators do have significantly higher values in each of the subscales. So the subscales of perceptiveness, which is being aware of the message meaning and different items that refer to that scale. That is, the second subscale would be attentiveness, how attentive we are with hearing and observing. And the third one would be the responsiveness, how does a person respond to other persons in the conversation. And to all three of those subscales, teachers, educators shown a higher level of involvement, because probably they are more involved. So, which is leading me to some conclusions, an attempt of an attempt to maybe interpret some of the data. The main conclusions would be that based on this pilot research is that satisfaction of the communication is higher in real-time communication than in non-real-time communication, which is not a big new thing. It is something that is consistent in the research. What was interesting is that it appears from the answers of our participants that facial expression does give an additional meaning to the content in online teaching, and you had items in first two tables that do refer that. That is significant to have some sort of added value and added meaning. But when asked about were they really bothered by the fact that teachers could not see them, students' answer would lead us to conclusions that it did not bother them so much, and that motivation also is higher in teacher educators for having more visual contact. And finally, when it comes to interaction involvement in online communication, teachers, educators showed higher level in all subscales. So maybe one of the interpretations could go into the direction that teachers really are, when we would analyze the sessions, we did not do that because this was all self-reports, but if we would to analyze the recordings, I believe that we would find that teachers really are more active. So that could explain this higher interaction involvement. But that also raises the question of the basic concept is that teaching is that education and teaching should be learner-centered. So where is the balance here? And of course, limitations would be definitely on sample size, and not just the size, but just it was one institution, only 10 participants, so no overall generalizations are possible. Maybe one direction into explaining this low frequency of face-to-face communication, where there was not too many switching on the cameras, is we find research that says that maybe social anxiety of students can play a role in it, and maybe that could be one factor, but I think things are more complex than that. And what is important for us is that we still do not have research in the sense that what are the effects of the students' achievements, and going towards these final thoughts, what we concluded, not based on the data, but there is definitely a need for our research to catch up with complexities of a practice, and just to provide some meaningful recommendations. And just a brief but just a brief thought on what was mentioned in the opening yesterday of this conference, is that yes, majority of these online teaching activities now in all the schools and universities did come as a result of sort of adapting and overcoming some barriers caused by the pandemic. However, I think it is very important to have a reminder that online learning and teaching is not something that is product of these couple of years. It is there is an intensive research, there is an intensive development and practice in online teaching and learning that could provide some solid ground to rely on. We don't have to create and learn from the scratch. We can just the question is how to use all these resources and use all those data for in very concrete situations. So basically how to use all this, not just as an obstacle we have to overcome, we and our students, but how to create different framework that provides finding and opportunities, and not be frustrated by the obstacles. So in that sense, I will conclude with sort of our research was created as a pilot research, and we are now analyzing the data, and we are just furnishing our instruments, and we will go I think by the end of the year more broad research in Serbia, but we are very welcome to invite others who see this topic in general of communication between student teachers and teacher educators, and specifically this face-to-face and visual audio immediacy factor in that communication, and we'll be happy to have a chance to collaborate with anyone who finds this topic interesting. And that would be all for this presentation. I'm very thank you for your attention, and I'm very interesting to hearing the comments.
Thank you very much.
I will stop sharing now. Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation, especially when you think of the fact that we take face for granted, yes? And then suddenly when you are online, there's no faces, you know? This is what I have lessons, of course, with my students, and I'm always kindly asking them to put on their cameras, turn on their cameras, because if they can, of course, or because sometimes they have some special occasions they cannot, but in general, I do prefer to have faces, yes, not only boxes. And this photo I really like, you know, with 2 boxes, because you never come to the lecture with a box, you know, on your face. It's really good.
It would be, I just thought it would be, imagine in a regular classroom, just when you were mentioning you cannot mute your students, and I was thinking, yes, but imagine a mute option and turn off camera option. It would be something unimaginable. But now we have, because teaching is still a process. It's not these online tools. It's still, you have to think of your learning objectives. You have to have the same teaching process, but only in an environment when these things are really a possibility. To have no face or to be muted.
Yes, I agree totally, and this concerns me a lot. So I will give the opportunity to others to ask or to comment. It's really interesting topic, I believe. Natasha, my colleague, please. Sorry.
Thank you. I would just like to add a comment. First, thank you for your presentations to all presenters. For me personal, this with camera on off has a big impact. In my case, I was very surprised that students have so much problems with camera in the way that they don't want to put it on. I don't mean when they didn't have it, or when they have bad connections or something like that. So I also liked a lot your first picture on the slide with bags on the heads. I think this is the important training for them to put camera on. They will be future teachers, and this online environment is also a class, contemporary substitute for a real class. And probably in the reality, they won't have bags on the head. I think this behavior is a very important message for us teachers, and opens questions: where did we miss something, or do something wrong? What is a message? What should we do better or different? Because teaching is interaction. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Tomorrow we're going to present some of the facts why they don't want to put their cameras on. There are some reasons. Yes. Okay, good. I think I totally agree what my colleague Natasha said. Totally agree. Okay, any other? We are just in time, but maybe you have. It's very interesting research. Yes, it's very interesting. Yes, all these issues, you know, how do we communicate? Yes, how do we cooperate? And also by Sina today, we heard, you know, some interesting ideas about cooperative learning, and as well teaching practice at the beginning by Nita. I think we have many issues raised today, and I would like to thank you, all of you, for your very interesting presentations, and or to you as well for your questions, and for the discussion. And I wish you the pleasant time at the conference, and in general. So thank you very much, and
Thank you.
bye-bye. Bye.